Every country has stories it never forgot. Not just stories told for fun. Stories told as warnings. Stories tied to certain roads, certain forests, certain houses, certain winters. Stories people passed down because forgetting them felt like a mistake. And if we're going to explore folklore around the world, one country at a time, there's no better place to begin than the United States. Because American folklore is not one thing. It is haunted farmland and endless forest, industrial towns and mountain roads, colonial legends, indigenous traditions, cryptids, omens, and spirits. And some of its darkest stories are still attached to real places you can visit right now. Today, we begin with four American legends that refuse to disappear: the Bell Witch, the Jersey Devil, Mothman, and the Wendigo. Some are ghost stories, some are creature tales, and some were never meant to entertain at all. They were meant to warn. Our first legend begins in Tennessee, and unlike many stories that start in deep wilderness, this one begins where people are supposed to feel safest, at home. According to one of Tennessee's most famous legends, the Bell family of Adams, Tennessee was harassed by a strange invisible presence from 1817 to 1821. Reports tied to the story describe knocks, whispers, voices, and physical disturbances inside the Bell home. Over time, the force haunting the family became known as the Bell Witch. That setting is part of what gives the legend its power. A haunted forest is frightening. A haunted battlefield is frightening. But a haunted home is different. It suggests that the walls around you can fail, that the ordinary places in your life can turn against you. In retellings of the Bell Witch story, the disturbances begin small. Strange scratching sounds, knocks in the walls, whispers in the dark. Then they escalate. Beds were said to shake. Voices called out from empty rooms. The invisible presence seemed less like a passing ghost and more like something that had chosen the family specifically. And that is what made the Bell Witch so memorable. This was never framed as a spirit that drifted through and vanished. It behaved like a force with intention. Over the years, later retellings made the haunting even larger. One of the most famous additions is the claim that Andrew Jackson himself became tangled in the Bell Witch legend. And the place memory is still there. Today, Adams, Tennessee is still identified with the legend, and Bell Witch Cave and Farm remains tied to the story. Whether someone sees the Bell Witch as a ghost story, a local myth, or something stranger, the reason it lasted is simple. It turns one of the oldest human fears into a story people never quite shake. The fear that the place meant to keep you safe won't. But if the Bell Witch is the fear of something entering the home, the next legend is something else entirely. Something from the wilderness, something unnatural, something that feels like it belongs to a landscape too large to control. Deep in the New Jersey pinelands, often called the Pine Barrens, there is a legend people still know by name: the Jersey Devil. Official New Jersey materials still treat it as one of the region's defining legends, commonly describing it as a creature with a horse-like head, hooves, wings, red eyes, and a chilling scream. That description is strange enough on its own. But the deeper reason the Jersey Devil survived is the setting. The Pine Barrens are real, a vast, unusual, heavily wooded region with a long reputation for isolation, vanished towns, and eerie emptiness. When folklore is attached to a place like that, it doesn't feel abstract, it feels rooted. The most famous version of the tale is the old Mother Leeds story, the cursed 13th child who transformed into something monstrous and flew into the night. As with most folklore, the details shift depending on who tells it. But the core image remains the same: something winged, shrieking, unnatural, and just beyond the reach of the lantern. Over time, people claim to hear it in the trees, to glimpse it crossing roads, to find tracks, to lose livestock. And that's the thing about regional folklore: it does not need everyone to agree on what happened. It only needs the landscape to keep cooperating with the story. A lonely stretch of pines, fog, strange sounds at night, an animal cry you can't identify. That is enough for a legend to survive for generations. The legend became so culturally recognizable that New Jersey's NHL team later adopted the name Devils, showing how far the folklore had traveled beyond the forest itself. Because even now, the Jersey Devil carries a very old fear that somewhere beyond the edge of the light, in a place that does not care about you, something is moving, and it does not belong to your world. But not every American legend lives in colonial shadows or wilderness myth. Some feel strangely modern, closer to us, attached not to folklore from centuries ago, but to a specific year and a specific disaster. In 1966, Point Pleasant, West Virginia, became the center of one of America's most famous cryptid legends. Witnesses began reporting a strange figure near an old industrial site known as the TNT area. Descriptions varied, but the image that endured was unforgettable. A tall, dark, winged presence with glowing red eyes. It became known as Mothman. What made Mothman different from many older legends was timing. This did not feel like an old story recovered from the past. It felt contemporary, a thing people were seeing now. A rumor moving through a real American town in real time. And then came the event that fused the legend to tragedy. On December 15, 1967, the Silver Bridge at Point Pleasant collapsed during rush hour traffic. 31 vehicles fell into the river. 46 people died. The cause was structural failure, not the supernatural. But in public memory, the timing permanently linked the collapse to the Mothman sightings that came before it. That is the turning point. Before the collapse, Mothman was a strange local sighting story. After the collapse, it became an omen. And that shift is why the legend lasted, because Mothman stopped being just a creature people saw near a road or an industrial site. It became a symbol for dread before disaster. Some treated the sightings as a warning. Others saw coincidence, fear, and rumor feeding each other in a town under stress. Both interpretations can exist at once. That is how folklore often works. It does not need certainty, it needs emotional truth. And Mothman carries one very well. The feeling that catastrophe can cast a shadow before it arrives. Today, Point Pleasant doesn't hide from the legend. It hosts an annual Mothman Festival, turning the story into memory, tourism, and local identity all at once. So Mothman endures for two reasons. Because the image is powerful, the red eyes, the wings, the bridge, the night, and because it became attached to a real grief. And then there is the final legend. Older than Mothman, older than the bridge, and darker in a very different way, because this last story was never just about fear from outside. It was also about what people can become. Of the four legends in this episode, the Wendigo may be the one most often flattened by modern internet horror. But in Algonquian-speaking traditions, it is far more serious than a generic monster. It is associated with winter, hunger, cannibalistic excess, and social breakdown. That framing matters, because the Wendigo is not strongest as a jump scare. It is strongest as a warning about famine, about greed, about winter so harsh that survival itself begins to break people down, about hunger so total that the line between human and inhuman starts to feel fragile. In many tellings, the Wendigo is connected to someone who becomes consumed by starvation, by greed, by the collapse of restraint, by an appetite that turns monstrous. And that is exactly what makes it so disturbing. The Bell Witch is frightening because something enters the home. The Jersey Devil is frightening because something moves through the wilderness. Mothman is frightening because something appears before disaster. But the Wendigo is frightening because it points inward. It asks what happens when a person crosses a moral line so severe that they stop being recognizable to themselves or anyone else. It is a story about isolation, about winter, about survival stripped down to its ugliest edge, about appetite without limit. And that is why the Wendigo has lasted. Not because it looks frightening in a modern illustration, but because it represents one of the darkest ideas folklore can carry. That under enough pressure, hunger can become more than physical. It can become spiritual, social, moral, a force that devours the person from the inside out. It was never only about what might be in the woods. It was also about what winter, desperation, and greed might awaken in us. And maybe that is what all enduring folklore does. It gives fear a shape people can remember. A witch in the home, a devil in the pines, a winged omen over a bridge, A Hunger in the Winter Woods. These stories survived because they were never just stories. They carried warnings, beliefs, anxieties, and the imprint of the places that created them. The Bell Witch still shadows Adams, Tennessee. The Jersey Devil still belongs to the Pine Barrens. Mothman still hovers over the memory of Point Pleasant. And the Wendigo still endures as one of the most unsettling warning figures in North American tradition. And this is only the beginning. We're exploring folklore around the world, one country at a time. Today was the United States. Next we head to Canada because every country has legends, and some of them never really leave.